Hello YouTube and welcome back to the channel outside the target demographic. Today we're going to be doing my 1 month usage review of the SOG Power Pint. Let's get started. For those of you new to the channel, welcome. I had challenged myself with replacing my tried and true 5 years plus of usage Victorinox Swiss Champ with a new to the block SOG Power Pint. I have a coworker, I'm sure you're watching, hi coworker, that relies on this as his daily carry, and from what I've seen of it, it seemed interesting. I've read some reviews that were concerning, and I'm not going to blue ball you. I feel like I side with a bunch of those reviews, but again, for a month, I replaced my 5 years of usage plus Swiss Champ with this new tool. The biggest selling point to me is, of course, the pliers. They turned out to be actually the best implement on this tool. One of maybe 3, if truth be told. So that is the mindset. I am comparing it directly against a Victorinox. I am not new to multi-tools. I have a Leatherman Wave. I have a number of the Victorinoxes. So this is, however, my first encounter usage with the SOG line of multi-tools. So let's go ahead and dive in and see if we can separate some truth from fiction. As always, if you're new to this channel, I have ridiculous OCD when it comes to notes and insights. So let's go ahead and get into a couple of those. First off, as I said, the number one selling point for this tool is, I would say, its small form factor. We're looking at about 1 inch wide at the widest point. You'll notice it's in a bit of an A shape versus the relatively squared, even though it's rounded, bear with me, shape of the Victorinoxes. So we're looking about 1 inch wide by 3/4 of an inch thick by just over 3 inches. Call it 3 1/4 there for the footprint. Very small. Ideal for belt carry. So it has a built-in belt clip, which I have added one to my Victorinox Swiss Champ. So belt carry is my preferred carry. I've got enough things in my pockets. Ask my other coworkers. So being able to put this on the hip is ideal. What I like about this is it's small enough that you don't need a holster. And since it has the belt clip built in, I do not require a holster. So I call it holsterless holster carry. Now is as good a time as any to go through the modifications I've done to this knife, make it a little bit more functional for me, possibly for you. 2 of them are staring at you right now. I have added proud thumb studs to the to replace the nail nicks. So originally, and if I go to the actually this one would work fine. There is a cutout, a nail nick on most of your outer tools, including your main knife, your scissors, your serrated knife, and your file. The idea here is you would use your nail to engage in that slot and open the tools. I find in practice that's not ideal, while the Victorinox employs the nail nicks. You'll notice all of them are proud, and it gives you a little bit of a leverage point where your surface of your nail will engage against another tool in order to get those tools to pull out. They're also proud enough that you can get your finger into them. With these, not so much. Not only do they not give you anything to leverage against, they're actually sitting recessed compared to the frame. So kind of the worst of both worlds. And you'd really have to get in there and try applying a rotational leverage to them. I find it didn't work so well. So what I have now is it's just barely proud enough where I can go ahead and put my thumb on it and I can open up those individual blades. Does make it a little bit thicker. I probably won't be able to cut down this far, right? Which does become an issue when we get into the length of these individual tool sets. But that is something that I was able to do on my tool. You could color code them. I have the silver on both sides, black on this side. We'll get into a little bit more detail on that here shortly. But you could put a blue one, a red one. You could anodize them. You could put in steel, whatever you want to do. But it also helps you identify, even in a low contrast, right, where that tool is. That silver really stands out in the dark compared to trying to find a hollowed out piece of metal in there. And I still do have the option of using the nail nick should I choose, but simple enough to do. I just found a screw with the same diameter. I crushed it into place, and then I use super glue to hold it into place. I don't have a tap and die set, so that's what I did. You can use a tap and die set if you would like, but I think it makes identifying where those openings are, especially for someone new to the tool. Hey, just grab the silver thing and open it, right? The difference on this side is you'll notice it's what I call a shark fin, and basically the idea behind it is I can use the whole front of my thumb, be it with gloved hands or not, and I can open up the main blade. So one, I can identify it. It's the one that doesn't have silver, right? Second, it's a shark fin. So the whole time the tool is rotating against my thumb, I have a very large surface pushing on it. So makes it very easy, especially with gloved and or dirty hands, to get that open. Second was identifying that as the main blade. And third, as I had shown before, when I wear this on my belt, now my tool does not sit like this, it sits like this. So it has a built-in angle where it makes grabbing the tool a little bit easier for me. I have more surface area instead of just these 3 sides. I now have all 4 sides available, and I can grab it a little bit easier. For those of you who are interested, this shark fin is just a plastic knife from the break room at work. Cut it into a shape, glued it into place. Hasn't given me any issues. It's given me the 3 benefits of gloved and ungloved opening, identification, and holding the tool set at a little bit of an angle off my belt. So simple enough to add. Use it should you find that useful. The next thing I did is, you'll notice there's a magnet here that typically isn't. One of the nice things about this tool is you can almost butterfly knife. I cannot, but you can almost butterfly knife this thing and get it to open one-handed, get quick access to those pliers. That super loose butterfly knife effect actually starts counting against you, especially when you're trying to seat this back onto a belt. So if this magnet were not here, as I tried sliding this onto a belt a number of times, this would kick open and I would be stabbing myself on both of these rather sharp, when you're not expecting it, plier nose. So this magnet makes it where the tool will not open until I give it just the least slightest amount of kick with my finger. And now I have the benefit of quickly deploying, right, the butterfly knife thing, with the benefit of a magnet retention system, an audible magnet retention system, while having the added benefit of that now becomes, if I'm working with a bunch of nuts and bolts and screws and stuff, you may have seen this with my flashlight videos, but let's say I have a couple of nuts and bolts and screws and all. If I push them close enough to the tool, they'll just magnetize onto it. So now almost an automotive bowl. It's a metallic bowl with a big magnet on the bottom, and you put your nuts and bolts and all. This is a good way to push all of your screws and push pins and whatever metal small bits you're using up against the tool, and it will now retain them, while giving me the benefit of magnetizing the entire tool set. So if I were to pull out the flat nose screwdriver, it's actually lightly, it's only been a month, magnetized. And I have the added benefit of magnetization. Since I have a magnet here, I also have a magnet here. This one is a curved hard drive magnet, a neodymium magnet. I added this to the belt clip, and now this will give me... we have a cookie sheet. It will give me a way if I'm working on a car or I'm the forklift safety instructor at work, working on the motorcycle, blah, 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 blah. Instead of going all the way down to place this on the ground or place it on a seat where it gets lost or something, I can magnetize it to the door frame, the top of the door frame, the door jamb, the forks of the forklift, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. So I no longer have to find a surface that is flat. If it's magnetic, I can just magnetize it onto a surface, and that gives me a little bit more usability. If it's useful to you, aces. The other benefit is black on lower contrast, black. Falls into the grass, falls under the car, something like that. Black on black is hard to see, but black with red is much easier to identify. So this is heat shrink. You can use whatever color you prefer. I like red. Let's see, that's maybe 10 degrees. Okay, so you can see it starts sliding, versus when I have the heat shrink, I can bring that angle up quite a bit more, and it's less likely to roll off of the surface I'm working on. So you have a little bit of surface grip, surface adhesion, I suppose, by putting some heat shrink on there. Also, you can identify which side quickly goes onto your belt. So simple add there. Another modification I did, and I've seen this on other channels, with the file and the opener sets. You'll notice they no longer have the shelf. So there used to be a little nail nick. It would stand out like... I don't think any of these have anything like it, but it would essentially be a little tip like this. And it was a way for you to reach in here and pull just that tool that you needed. You can see I'm struggling now because I don't have that nail nick. Well, I don't need it. I deleted that nail nick, and now I have the thumb stud, as we covered. The benefit to that is I now have a relatively long-reaching, large-size flathead screwdriver. So +1 screwdriver onto the tool set. When we go to the other side, we have +2 flathead screwdrivers. This one I cut the shelf off and I beveled it a little bit. This engages smaller slotted screwdrivers, and we did the same on this one. So I now have a small, medium, and large size Phillips screwdriver that I did not have before. So +3 screwdrivers to the already stacked tool set of this guy. And then you can see I have a notch right here. Come on, lighting. And a notch right here. And that allows me the benefit of, instead of pulling from this way in line with the tool, I now come in from the side. And I can get access to either one of those tools, much like I come in from the side with the Victorinox. So all you need is a bench grinder, angle grinder, Dremel, anything like that. And you can add 3 flathead screwdrivers to your tool set for very minimal cost, shall we say. Very minimal drawback would be more appropriate. I believe the last thing I did was on my scissors, I added some heat shrink, and that gives me both a wider surface to push down on to actuate them and a more cushioned surface. So I'm not pushing metal into my thumb, metal that has resistance because it's trying to cut through something. Until it does, it's going to be pushing against the meat of my thumb pretty hard. So that gives you a little bit of added comfort, cushion, whatever, for your cutters. looking through, I believe that is it as far as my modifications go. As I said, I would say, again, the pliers are, I mean, they're an 8 out of 10. They punch well above their weight for their size. Fully open, you're looking at 5 inches. They open substantially wider than you would think something this size would be able to. Additionally, I haven't had any issues with prying or pulling or lifting or bending or anything like that with, again, a relatively smaller sized plier set. So I'd give these an 8 or 9 out of 10. I mean, for their size, I think they're fantastic. There's very little wobble, even after a month's use, on that plier head. One thing I did notice, and you can see here, when I close them, there is still light showing here, and it gets less and less until you get to the tip. So these aren't ideal for pulling at very small things, like trying to get a hair. You're going to have to get it at just that very tip, and it's almost easier to come in poking at it instead of trying to grab sideways. So something to keep in mind. I have cut 16 gauge braided brass wire, no problem with these cutters. I've lifted hot things out of the convection oven at work, all sorts of picking up heavier objects. Like I said, the lunch out of the convection oven, it's 2-3 pounds, and I'm able to pick that up no problem. One thing I've learned to do is take my useless finger and make it useful. So I can now grab things like this, and I can grab implements by essentially giving myself a spring-loaded mechanism. This is not spring-loaded, so I have the ability to open and close the jaws by using my ring finger to perform that task. So if that's a 8 out of 10, the next one would be the main blade. What I do like about it is the entire length of the edge is sharp. And by sharp, I mean sharp. Out of the box, I was able to... yeah, and we're doing it here. So out of the box, I was able to shave with it. And here we are a month later, and I am shaving with it. So I haven't really felt the need to touch it up. It's very rather sharp, as I said, right out of the box. I'd give this like a 7 out of 10. What I'm going to try and do here... while we're here... You're looking at 2 inches, maybe just shy, 1.9 inches in length. That is a cuckoo clock. Everyone should have one. What I'm going to try and do here is hold this in place, and as I wobble it, you'll notice there's quite a bit of wobble, both this way and this way. Doesn't instill the most confidence. We'll get into quality control with this tool as we go. That would be a negative, by the way. But as far as positives, I'd give this like a 6 or 7. I feel like it's a perfectly functional blade. I don't like the wobble, especially since one of the selling points, again a negative, is the fact that it has a locking mechanism. This has more wobble to it than my slip joint Victorinox. I mean, there is nothing there until, of course, I get past that threshold. But so the pliers, the main blade, and honestly, I really like the hook blade, the draw blade. This is fantastic for cutting the plastic clamshell packaging. As soon as you get that started, you just pull it straight. You can't sink too deep and cut in. You can't sink too deep and cut your fingers. It's a very controlled cutting edge. The other thing I like about it is, in my practice, if it fits in here, it can be cut. By that I mean rope, twine, paracord cuts pretty easily. Zip ties will cut fine. The most resistive thing that I've cut is 16 gauge braided copper extension cord. I was able to, once the insulation is cut and you have the 3 individual wires, I'm able to cut each one of those, no problem with this. So very impressed by the hook knife here. Honestly, Wouldn't mind having one of them in the Victorinox. But here again, you'll notice, I'm going to try and hold that up right. There's a little bit of wobble on all the dimensions. And you're going to have that across the board with all the tools. You can see quite a bit of wobble there. And unfortunately, the SOG started out not having that. And the more it's been used, and by used, I mean lightly, frequently, but lightly, in over a month's time, I feel like this is walking far too quickly. But those, I would say, are the 3 main tools that I would use. The rest of them are subpar. And I guess we can, let's cover some more of the positives. 4.2 ounce weight, fantastic. Disappears on a belt, as I said. The added belt clip is fantastic. Sometimes I'll forget that I'm wearing it, especially compared to Swiss Champ. I would say it's maybe 30% smaller than the Swiss Champ in all of the dimensions, length, weight, height, and depth. All 4 of those. It seems to be substantially smaller. The pliers, as I said, are the killer app of this tool set. The compound leverage system is fantastic. The biggest thing I was able to grip in here is the bottle off of a 2-liter bottle. And not only was I able to grip it, but with one hand, I was able to rotate it with enough torque to get it off. So it can open substantially larger. At its largest point, you're looking at 2.5 inches from tip to tip. Probably more likely 1.5 inches with the actual usable part of the jaw. But even then, you still have quite a bit of leverage even when it's open that far, especially compared to something like the Leatherman, which is why my Leatherman doesn't get carried. So the pliers are fantastic. Punch well above their weight. Open very far. Grip pretty well. Still have the leverage on it. The locking tools are nice. They're not necessary for me. I come from the slip joint world, so I'm not necessarily looking for that. And the reality of the situation is these have sympathetic opening due to the poor quality control. So if I open just this one serrated blade, you'll notice 2 other implements open. You'll also notice I do not have a locking knife. So in order to get that to lock, you either have to use your fingers to block the other tools from coming out. And you'll notice I need 2 hands to do this now, defeating the one-handed opening, to hold those in place to get the blade to click. Now you'll notice I said to get the blade to click. There is an audible, tactile snap. And you know that has been employed. The problem is, if you don't hear it, it is not employed. And you now think you now have purchased a tool with a locking mechanism. The tool itself defeats the locking mechanism. So now you have to open the tool set, roll it, close all remaining tools to snap that into place. I personally don't see the benefit. I think they screwed the implementation. Therefore, you have a locking tool set that locks 3% of the time. Therefore, you can trust it 0% of the time. To show you that that is the case, I'm going to do over here with the main blade. You'll see these open. With the file, you'll see these open. With the scissors, they will sometimes, well, not even. So this one opened, and now your scissors are not locked in place. So when you go to push down on it, you're now pushing into this tool, the cap lifter, and this is neither locked nor is the spring engaging. So now you have to roll it over to click that all the way down to push this down, and now your spring mechanism has engaged. The selling point of a locking mechanism is 1, not true, and 2, actually hindered, in that you now have to open the tool you want, to roll the tool over, to close the ones you don't want, to engage the tool you do want. It's a liability, is what it is. The benefit here is you can either open the tool to push in on the spine, thus releasing the lock mechanism, or I can open any other implement on this side of the tool, and that will defeat the locking mechanism as well. So that works well enough. The lock does not, and honestly, that right there is kind of a fail for this tool. While I have the end exposed, you'll see that some parts are shimmery shinier than others, and that is because, and I'm going to add some auxiliary lighting here, the black finish that I believe you pay extra for is just chipping and peeling off of the pivots here. So to be fair, this is a moving part. Every time you open it, it is grinding against the lock mechanism. The lock mechanism here. So if I can hold this stable, you'll see that the lock mechanism has to be lifted away from the tool to allow it to roll. There's an indent right here that it will spring load back into, much like the ejector on a firearm. So it's going to constantly want to be pushing forward until there's a recess, and then it's going to engage. So all the finish has stripped off in a month's usage. Visually, I don't care for that, but secondarily, and I'll say actually primarily, I now have exposed metal to rust on the mechanism that by design is going to rotate against another piece of metal to lock and unlock the tool. So I'm now adding rust to the one part of the tool, arguably besides the blade edge, that I really don't want rust introduced to. So that's a fail. As we go into these individual tools, this one's an inch, not even an inch and a quarter long. What kind of leverage are you going to have for can opening with something that's this small? Yeah, this small. Compare that to the Victorinox. You have substantially more leverage with this and a substantially larger cutting edge with this. So while it has, I think they said 18 individual tools on it, plus the 3 that I added with the individual flathead drivers, they are, I'm going to say, compromised. Their reach is not there, therefore their leverage is not there, therefore their cutting edges are not there, therefore the amount of metal and probably the quality of the metal, it just isn't there, especially compared to the tried and true Victorinox. But we have that one there. We have the 2-inch main blade, as we've already covered. The Phillips, it's less than 1 1/4 inches, especially if you're going to go to here. You're looking at less than an inch in reach. Let's compare that to the Victorinox. You're looking at 1 1/4 inches. Oh, big difference. Yes, it is a big difference. Watch. The head of this, we're going to do the auxiliary lighting again. The head of this is substantially larger than the head of the SOG. I mean, this is twice as thick there. Maybe 25% as thick there. So this is better designed to hold its shape, not lose its finish and start bending, as you can kind of already tell this one is. Additionally, the shank of this stays relatively thin. This one, the shank substantially widens. It's twice as thick by the time you get to the hilt. So not only do you not have the reach, you don't have the head diameter, you don't have the quality of the head, you don't have the metallurgy of the head, you don't even have the shank that will go into a toy, hypothetically, but also in reality in my life, because I have 2 kids under the age of 4, wouldn't recommend. But if you're trying to get into a recessed screw to replace a battery or something like that, you can only go this deep, because the deeper you go, the thicker this tool gets, and it physically will not recede into those openings. Really disappointing, truth be told. Auxiliary lighting, be gone. The next one we have is the cap lifter. Again, a system of leverage designed to remove the cap off of a beer bottle compared to the Leatherman, or sorry, the Victorinox. This is a third of the size. It's not even comparable. That is... Now, it functions, okay? So, being the beer drinker I am, it was a spin-off cap for what that's worth, and I had to leverage the cap this way and then at a 90-degree angle. It is a spin-off cap. It's not designed to be pried off, but it only took 2 pries and it came off no problem. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying it's less efficient than its competitors. Let's leave it that way. But I mean, even the reach on this guy. Can I lay that flat? I don't think I can. So we're looking at, well, that's not even fair. 3/4 of an inch on that. It very, very small, which again means that you can only engage a screw that's 3/4 of an inch away from you versus this guy. It's 1 1/4 inch. This is almost twice as long as this one. The scissors function, I call them more choppers than scissors. There are some reeds at work out in the parking lot, and when I cut them, it doesn't slice them like the Victorinox does. It will chop them. When I cut, it will jettison almost like an ejected shell casings from a firearm. It will deploy that snipping someplace else. So hopefully what you wanted is the thing in this hand, because what you cut is leaving the area. That said, they do work. They don't open very far at all. They open 1/4 inch, guys. And no, you cannot get it to open any further than that. The spring is quite good. The spring will return it every time. The geometry, again, doesn't slice. It more cuts, chops. But the ability to get material in there, it just isn't there. And since we're doing it, the Victorinox scissors destroy. I mean, they're 50%, 30% bigger, and the jaws open substantially larger. And the cutting edge is 30%, 25% longer. So these hands down win. But they are there. They do function. I've cut paracord, reeds, like I said. I can cut through like blades of grass, and it's a nice clean cut. It doesn't fold over on itself or anything. See Gerber for that. The serrated blade on this one is there. I'm not a fan of serrated blades. It is there. It is quite sharp. It does have the wobble as well. So quality control has been covered. The file works. I usually use my file for my nails. It works well enough. I don't think it works as well as the Victorinox. To be fair, my Victorinox isn't shellacked in black finish, so for what that's worth. It is 3-sided. It works well enough. The straight edge here, the metal file, there are PC chassis at work in our recycle area. I was able to saw through the PC chassis. So I'd say it's about the same metallurgy and resistance as a cookie sheet. And I was able to cut it with minimal effort. So works well enough for what it is. Even then, if we compare it to double the throw, right? And you're cutting by the throws, not how quickly you can reciprocate. So it's just not there. This tool is the same length, essentially, as the Victorinox. The tool sets are no more than, 70%, 60% the length of the Victorinox is. We'll get into why here shortly. This hook knife, I have no comparison. Honestly, I do really like this. I wouldn't mind having one on the Victorinox. Works well enough. Does wobble, as I said. Crazy sharp. Just dragging it along my skin, it will grab my skin and will cut me. Ask me how I know. Getting into the one flathead that they gave you almost a jeweler's flathead. Here again, it does have pretty decent reach. You're looking at over 1.5 inches to here, and then your shank starts expanding. So if you're going for something recessed, you're only going to be able to go in so deep before you bottom out, and you can't go any deeper. Yeah, okay, sexual. Next up, we have the awl. The awl is very nice. Almost a box cutter, a crafting knife. You could do very precise cuts with it, and it will, if I had completed that corner, it will make those cuts. So very sharp, very easy geometry compared to the Victorinox, where, I mean, you have a edge here and then like some kind of concave thing there. It's weird. So much easier to sharpen, much easier to keep sharp, and works pretty well. Also, it's inline versus a corkscrew kind of thing compared to the Victorinox, so that works pretty well. And then, of course, we have our main blade. Here, we have another con. This is a lanyard connection point. The problem with this lanyard connection point is anytime you connect something to the lanyard connection point, you now have complicated getting your tools out. Especially your main blade, as you try and deploy this, you're going to start running into and locking up against that lanyard connection. So you have to use a quick disconnect to get that out of the way. So now you have a lanyard that every time you want to use the second most used tool, you have to disconnect and remove. Poorly thought out. They could have put this on this side. The problem is then they'd have two different size screws, because the same amount of metal for this lanyard is holding the belt hook in place. Just poor implementation, poor quality control across the board. Getting into quality control. Auxiliary lighting online. I'm going to use my patented pointy. You can see right here is a bigger gap, thin. They have brass washers in here, and to their credit, they've used brass, but they don't have the same amount of brass washers in between all of them. And the only thing I can determine is that is a way for them to use as many washers as they need to get the tool to work. It was not designed to have, like, there's no washer, a thick washer, no washer. So they basically shim it until it works, instead of designing the same amount of gap in between, which means sometimes you're going to have the ability to get your fingernail in between certain tools, and sometimes you're not. Poor quality control is all I can say on that. As I've learned, if I pull out my main blade, the sympathetic opening is kind of a double-edged benefit in that I can flick, and now all of these deploy. I can just tuck away the ones that I don't need, and now I have it. I say that's poor quality control because, one, it shouldn't do that, and two, it doesn't do that on this side. I can flick as hard as I want to, and these tools are not opening. So it's not a benefit, it's a bug. It is something that shouldn't be there. It's something that you can't totally rely on. And it's something that they clearly didn't design because the other side doesn't do it. Let's see. There is a little bit of wobble here. And this is with a month's worth of use, as noted. I don't think there's anything I can do about it. I believe it's more the compound leverage system here. And there's no way I can tighten that or rivet it or anything like that. So another thing you'll notice is I talked about the finish on these wear points. You can see from here forward, that's exposed metal. That's shellacking right there. We have a chip. We have scratches along the side here, scratches, missing paint. So The finish is subpar. It is falling off with not abuse, with use. Very minimal use at that. So opt for the stainless steel, I guess, would be what I would tell you if you're interested in getting this tool. I believe the last thing I have for you, there is a magnet right here. There is a magnet focus right there. It's the silver portion. And you can tell it's not a circle. So getting my patented pokey system here. The bottom part, closest to me right here, is actually broken. I have used this bit holder exactly 4 times. Exactly 1 time to actually spin out a screw. So that magnet is already fractured. It is glued in place, it is holding in place, and it will hold bits in place, but it's already broken with a month's worth of use and 4 actual uses, with 1 actually being used to hold a bit and screw something out. I'm not impressed, guys. So now the overview. You have a very small footprint tool with a very large number of tools, number of implements on it for, I would say, an overpriced price point. I got this one on sale for $30 from the SOG website. And for $30, I'm satisfied enough with it. I think I can find uses for it. I have noted that it will fit inside the pistol grip of an AR-15. It will stick out about this far, so you'll need to like shim it with tape or a sock or something like that if you intend to keep it up in there. I have also seen that it will fit inside of a Altoids kit. So you can build a kit around this, and honestly, I think I am going to be adding that to my Altoids 10, so watch for a video on that, a follow-up to my original Altoids video. Check my channel for the original one. For $50, I would be incredibly disappointed. By the way, $50 is the typical asking price. For $30, I feel it's sufficient. It does not replace the Swiss Champ. Some may think that's unfair. This is a $60 tool versus a $50. The one thing it does have better is, of course, the pliers. And even that, I don't know is worth it. Sure, these are bigger. Sure, they open further. I find that I never needed a bigger set than the ones on the Victorinox. And if I did, I went and got me a bigger set. Now, as a companion tool, having both of these on my belt at the same time gives me the benefit of having 2 knives, of having 2 pliers, being able to rotate things off, being able to hold a nut while rotating a bolt, stuff like that. So I'm not going to be selling this off or, throwing it in a drawer or something like that, unlike the Leatherman Wave that I have. I think, as I said, I'm going to be adding it to my Altoids 10. But all in all, for $30, I would say it's worth the gamble. For me, that gamble didn't pay off. For you, it might. For $50, I would probably avoid this, honestly. For $10, $15 more, you could get the tried and true 125 plus years of being in business, of refining their tool sets, of using quality steel, of being sent into space with NASA, of going on to mountain hikes and underwater and all these things. The Victorinox is, to me, the best tool that you can have in your pocket or on your belt. Says I. Tell me in the comments below if I'm wrong. I'd love to hear from you. Please use some objective stuffs instead of I feel. I'll listen to those too, but I'll respond to the objective ones. All that said, even with the modifications done, the small footprint and the banger pliers just don't justify the $50 to me. So hopefully I've made my case. Hopefully I've made it well enough. Hopefully you guys are going to walk away a little bit more informed and hopefully a little bit entertained. It's kind of what I try and do here. So as always, this is outside the target demographic. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Any questions, comments, concerns you have, leave them in the comments section below. I'd be interested in hearing from you guys. Let me know if you have any experience with this tool and if you come to the same conclusions that I have. And until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video.